Hi, my name is Hillary Ronen. I'm the current District 9 Supervisor and running to continue in this role for another 4 years. I have enjoyed so much the work that I've done over the past 4 years. It's been an honor to serve the Mission and Portola and Bernal Heights neighborhoods of San Francisco. I have gotten a lot done in that time, everything from fighting and creating one of the first neighborhood-based navigation centers and solving the tent encampment crisis, at least momentarily in the district, while respecting the dignity of unhoused people. That was a huge accomplishment. And then after treating the symptom of homelessness, I wanted to get at the root causes, and so authored together with Frontline Providers Mental Health SF, which is a major reform of our mental health and addiction treatment system in San Francisco that we will start putting into effect this year. I also have done groundbreaking work on cultural districts to stop displacement of both the arts and cultural components, as well as the small business and family-run businesses and residents of different cultural districts in the city, starting with the Calle 24 Latino Cultural District. There's several in the Castro, Tenderloin, Soma, and Bayview. I also created the Office of SHARP, which is the Sexual Harassment, Assault and Response Office, because survivors were not getting treated as they should in the city, and now we have an advocacy arm. So I'd be so honored to continue this work and have the endorsement of the Green Party.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question from John Mark Shandonia.
Hi.
John Mark.
Hey, so we live in the Mission, so you're our supervisor, and I wanted to ask about this the issue of housing homeless people in hotels. Do you have any insight into why the supervisors couldn't do something more, such as sue London Breed to force her to obey the law? And did you not have the votes, or no appropriate legal standing, or what was the issue there?
So I did inquire with the city attorney about that, and they had never researched the issue, interestingly enough, despite the mayor having been refused to implement legislation that's been passed by the board with a supermajority. In this case, it was a unanimous legislation. They said that it gets into very complicated issues because of separation of powers, that the mayor's job as the executive of the city is to run the departments. The job of the Board of Supervisors is to set policy, and that it would be sort of, it hadn't been done in San Francisco before, so they weren't sure. Ultimately, that wasn't going to get to the issue fast enough. Their analysis is that the financial limitations, because written into the law itself, and this is true of all city laws, that it's all subject to the finances being available. And so that gives the mayor so much wiggle room, unfortunately, because she has the ultimate say. I mean, well, the board has the ultimate say, but she can, sets all, the main policy, and then we jiggle with pennies at the end of it to slightly change the budget. And so we just decided it wasn't worth it, and that we just had to continue fighting. I am encouraging and looking for plaintiffs in the Mission who care first and foremost about the well-being of our unhoused population to sue the city, like the University of Hastings did, UC Hastings. They did not do it caring for unhoused people. They did it because they just didn't want to see people in the streets. But the response they got is hundreds and hundreds of people were moved into hotel rooms, which is exactly what we want. So I am pursuing that idea where we have an outside plaintiff who is acting in the best interest of the unhoused population, but who can also force the city into a settlement agreement that forces the mayor to do what we want her to do, which is spend money on hotel rooms and transfer people ultimately into permanent supportive housing. I did do a lot of work in negotiations with the mayor to make sure that the bond on this year's ballot, that money was shifted from parks to homelessness, so that we could purchase some of these hotels that are going on the market and convert them into permanent affordable housing. So I was able to shift $47 million to do that, which I'm proud of and excited about. So we're just going to keep trying. I'm advocating and fighting every single day. It's the one issue I've worked on nonstop since I've taken office, and there's no end in sight.
Okay, we've got a question from Rich. Rich, you're on mute. You're on mute, Rich.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Hi, Hillary. Yeah. My question is in regards on and you wanting to and just for the benefit for all that who will be seeing this, besides us, on what plans you have, if you have any at this point once with your plan to defund the SFPD, how would the services and monetary sources be reallocated?
Great question. There's several places that we're looking to defund the police. One is right now we're spending about $11 million a year for police to respond to homeless calls, both through the HSOC apparatus as well as the homeless outreach team. So we're looking to divert those dollars into mental health SF, which will create a crisis response team several crisis response teams made up of a medically trained professional and a peer advocate that go and respond together to calls for a person who's having a mental health crisis. So that's one area. Another area is traffic enforcement. Not sure we need police officers doing that job. Those dollars could be shifted to the MTA to better and more cheaply. So perhaps we can have more traffic enforcement if we shift those dollars, which I think is a good thing, to the MTA. We're also looking at potentially replacing police at the SFO airport with sheriffs. Many airports are staffed by sheriffs and not police. It's a lot cheaper to do it that way. The airport's an enterprise department, so that won't actually move money to the general fund, unfortunately, but at least it would be better using airport dollars for public safety protection that they need at the airport. And then finally, we're looking at, at this point, not filling any vacancies, removing several academy classes so that as further vacancies come up, we're dwindling the size of the force as opposed to adding, replacing people who are going into retirement. The big question that's kind of open, that's on the table, is if there's going to be any layoffs. Depending on how many officers are going to be no longer needed for the traffic enforcement and the homeless outreach and activity. Is it possible just to not fill vacancies, or do we need to, would it be possible to lay off people and still meet the other needs that we have to take more time reimagining? And so we'll see what happens. I don't want to look at this. I want to prevent layoffs in most other circumstances, but in this circumstance, it's what's the best way to preserve public safety and reimagining how we do that as a society. And depending on the length of time it takes to do that and how we do that, if it means we don't need as many officers as we currently have employed, I'm open to layoffs. But I'm not sure we're going to get there this year, especially because we're not going to fill any vacancies and canceling several academy classes.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, yeah, just follow up to that. Yeah, it seems like with the police, there is, my understanding, kind of a mandated level of minimum police. So I guess that was something that maybe there's also legislation looked at about if we could reform that, but it looks like you're working on that. So that's great. As far
Yeah,
as
it'll
a
be on the
law,
ballot. It'll be on the ballot, so
it'll be
vote
on the
for it.
ballot.
Removing
Okay,
that
okay.
mandatory minimum. Yeah.
Yes, okay. And then in terms of, I'd be really supportive of another lawsuit like UC Hastings had filed, and like you were saying, trying not to say clear the tent encampments, but let's increase services. And I guess along that line, as you were talking about the city attorney, my understanding, I've been reading in the San Francisco public press that some of the contractors, surprise, surprise, I guess, one of them being United Services and another one being, I guess, JC Devereaux,
Yeah.
have been getting paid millions of dollars a year, and they're not maintaining the sanitation levels that they're supposed to be maintaining, apparently. So I don't know if that's something that the city attorney could sue for, or maybe that could be an addendum to the lawsuit or another.
Yes,
aspect.
we're actually canceling, in the process of canceling some of those contracts because they have, been coming up in the FBI investigation of Mohammed Nuru and all of the corruption. So we are doing that and unfortunately, I was really upset with many of my colleagues. Yesterday, Gordon Marr was sponsoring a public advocate to put on the ballot, which I think is the sort of independent elected office that we need to root out this endemic corruption that's been plaguing City Hall for decades. But there were 5 of us who agreed, and the majority prevented it from getting on the ballot. So sadly, we're not going to be able to vote for that position this year, but hopefully again in the future. And in the meantime, we're just going to have to put on the pressure at the Board of Supervisors to continue to root out all of this corruption.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah,
The next candidate waiting, or
there's no one waiting. So if you have any other questions, John Mark.
I don't want to go if someone else is not already. Does anybody else have a question? Or?
I just want to raise the question about the budget for this year. And, so much does depend, of course, on what happens in Congress and whether or not the president will sign off. How are you guys even dealing with that? We got to have a budget by August.
Yes, so we're dealing with it. So we have at this point, because we've balanced the budget, we had to rebalance the budget for this fiscal year, and we filled a $250 million hole in that budget. So we have about $1.5 billion hole currently.
Right.
We're planning on meeting that goal. About 300 million. We're depending on the new gross receipts ballot measure that changes how we collect business taxes. That will also unlock the former 2 Prop Cs, the big C and baby C, we call them, the homeless tax, as well as the one for childcare. If this ballot measure passes, and it's a 50+1 measure, so we're feeling pretty good about those chances, it's polling very well, then that's going to immediately unlock over $300 million that we can use to balance our budget. That's number one. Number two, we have about $400 million in reserves that we've been saving for a rainy day like today, and we're going to use it. It's that rainy day time. We have another about 300 million in reductions in departments, which we're mostly trying to obtain through letting go of vacancies. There's a hiring freeze in the city, cutting supplies, cutting tech contracts, all that kind of stuff to prevent layoffs and service cuts. And I will say kudos to the Department of Public Health, which is our biggest general fund department, that they were able to meet a 10% reduction without any service cuts whatsoever. Layoffs. So that's fantastic news.
That's amazing.
And that's a lot because there's a lot of Medi-Cal dollars that much more than we anticipated that we're going to be able to draw down, federal dollars that will fill some of that gap. We're also, had a very ambitious capital plan coming up that in good financial times was possible. Now that we're no longer in those times, we are going to hi everyone. We are going to, cut some of that work, and so that's another about 300 million. And then what's the fifth area? Oh, restructuring some debt, as well as looking at, some other type of in-department IT savings of, systems that we're planning on developing that we're going to wait to develop. So that's that's our plan at the moment.
Good. Good to hear. Thank you.
Sure.
Well,
Thank you.
Supervisor Ronen, thank you very much for the update and thanks for dropping by. I know you have a busy schedule and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise. And it's nice to see Valiant.
Daniel.
See you later. Take care, everyone.